Sandosham to everybody. My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankar, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. I missed last week's satsang, so let's continue from where we have left. This is chapter 28, continuing from the last satsang that I did with all of you all. And this is essentially, we covered quite extensively the different bodies that we have. And Mahan in this chapter talks about visit to subtle regions. That means, you see, our mind, we have a gross body, and our gross body has a particular frequency, right? Because it's experiencing everything in this material world using the gross body. And the gross has a particular frequency. And that frequency is captured by the human mind, right? So we have this physical body, the apparatus, the sensors, and all that are bringing in information into our, in the form of electrical pulse into our brain, and then it's converted into information and knowledge. And the state of that conversion depends very much on the state of the refinement of the human mind. And if the human mind is very gross, very instinctive, human beings are part of that animal kingdom. So we inherit a lot of the traits of many, many animals through the evolution that we have come through. And through knowledge and education and acquisition of jnana, there's a sense of refinements that takes place. And the state of our refinement of our mind determines the kind of frequency that we generate in our mind, right? And also it impacts our ability to understand, analyze, and also our intellect, right? So we see that, the state of our experience depends very much on, the state of our mind. And we see that for many people, when the mind is still very much caught up with this material body, it is very instinctive. It is hard for them to experience the subtleness, right? The subtle aspects of them. So we see that, here Swamiji says, to be able to touch that subtleness, we really need to intensify and refine our human mind. And you see that sometimes even among our own human species, you see that many of them, behave like, there's a lack of refinement. They get angry, they get, they use physical force, the language, the words that come out is very, very crude. So we see that when the mind is, at a particular frequency, that's the kind of thoughts it generates. That's the kind of words that come out, and that's the kind of behavior that we get, right? So here, great saints and sages say that, if you want to, experience the different forms of our own existence, the gross, the more subtle, the causal body, which is, the slow separation of, the grossness to that more, refined, divine aspects of us, one needs to intensify particular practices, and I'll come back to those practices. And finally, those practices leads us to the true identity of who we are, and this is the most subtlest. So we move from that gross to more refined and more subtle. So here, in the scriptures, it talks about the physical body or the Annamaya Kosha, which is, very much the material elements of nature itself, right? So we see that, when we, our body, we understand our body very well, we keep our body very well, we see that the experience becomes more and more refined. And that is why you see in some scriptures and some teachers and some masters, they say that keep your body healthy. The Annamaya Kosha is very important. The physical body is very important for us to interface in this material world, right? So we see that, the five elements are crucial, but not only the five elements of food, and that's why you see in some teachings they have sattvic food, certain food that is good for the body, and certain food that is not good for the body. Certain food that, in certain climatical condition is good to keep the body warm. In some, countries where the temperature is very hot, the kind of food you eat is very different to balance. So the physical body must be in a state of balance. Another aspect which is very important is the brain. The brain is an integral part of the physical body, and I've written about this. We need to make sure brain is the most important aspect of the physical body. We see that when we do not, particularly when mother is carrying a child, when she does not have good nutrition, good food, good sleep, good rest, good environment, peaceful environment, we see that all this impacts the fetus and the baby. Especially when you don't have food, you see that parts of the brain stops developing or will not develop. And you have a hardware problem. So number one is that nutrition is very important. Number two is that exercise is very important, because exercise, raises the metabolism, enables the body to when the body's metabolism is up, you see that, the ability to convert energy, and all these are very important. So we see that, when a mother is pregnant, food is good, important, exercise is important, peace of mind is very important. All these helps build the brain, helps build the body. If the brain is not functioning very well, you see that parts of the body also are impacted. So we see that, after the birth of the body, looking after the brain also is very important, because the brain controls, you have the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, all those, and, endocrinal part of the endocrinal system, helps, the process of, metabolism, anabolism, and catabolism, and cell growth, and so on. So we see that when the human body and the brain are not well developed, it is hard for someone to go to a subtle level, right? So, but when the brain is nourished, when the brain is healthy, and you see that the ability for the brain to understand, cognize becomes better, and it is able to transcend more subtler frequencies, right? So we see that in great teachings and great saints and sages, and in the Gurukula, in various ashrams, when the child is born at a very early age, the child is, they make sure good nutrition, milk, and various, food is given to ensure the development of the body, development of the brain, but also they infuse exercise, yoga, asanas, breathing, good habits, positive thinking, reading of the scriptures. So reading of the scriptures, means reading complex ideas, deep thoughts that makes the mind function better. So all this has an impact on the hardware, which is the brain and the body. Unfortunately, today we see that, all these practices are not in place. Most mothers are stressed when they're expecting, they don't eat good nutritious food, they don't exercise, there's a lot of worries in the family, there's a lot of conflicts in the family. All these impacts the child. And you see that, there are hardware problems, and the children cannot go at a much more subtler level. The other thing also is that, those days where the mothers are expecting, they listen to good music, they read. But today, because they're all in front of the TV watching, you see that those, vibrations are sent to the children, and then the children are born. We put the children in front of TV, letting TV, or now we have mobile phones. You see that the brain develops in a different way very fast because the impulse is so intensive that the brain stimulation is so intensive at a very young age. And you see that there is lack of ability for the brain to settle down, introspect, contemplate, reflect, meditate. So the sense of the brain becomes so sensitive to fast-based impulse that you see that, they become hyper. So we see that, when our physical body, particularly our brain, is not well developed, we see that we have difficulty going deeper to much more subtler frequencies. After the child is born, the conditioning is also very important. Of course, we have the normal school system that we teach, studying, learning timetables, but we also lack, in the modern world, we lack in teaching, things such as mindfulness and so on. So, over time, you see that as the brain ages, it goes through rapid development and so on. And then what happens is that you need all the other learnings like mindfulness, meditation to nourish the brain. And over time, you see that even our nutrition declines. And you see that the brain ages very fast. And many people feel exhausted, many feel tired, and over time, you see that, when the brain starts declining or its energy dissipating, you see that it is hard for them to cognize very subtle frequencies, while as feeling their own life force. So in this, we see that intensity must start in the womb of the mother, and making sure that it's continuously developed, the body is developed very well with nutrition, exercise, breathing, good stimulation of the brain, productive, stimulation that helps the brain to, sit down quietly, synthesize, and all those things. Without a very powerful brain, it is very difficult for one to experience the subtle forces that governs the human body, the subtle forces that manages the human body, the subtle forces that negates the human body, the subtle forces that help the mind slowly, separate from that body and see the difference. So we see that the first part of the physical body health is extremely important, right? So while spirituality and all this is very important, the base, we are living in this material world, we need to make sure that the physical body is healthy. Right? When the physical body is healthy, we see that, we are able to go deeper. We're able to experience much more the forces within us, the vibrations, the life force. So if we don't understand our physical body very well, if our physical body is not healthy, we can't sit in lotus position, or we can't, sit for 20 minutes or half an hour for meditation. Many people find it very difficult, right? Because, the body is not well harmonized. So when they can't sit down quietly or can't sit down in particular postures, you see that, the ability to experience this life force becomes more challenging. So that is why I tell people, sometimes you're not tone your body, do a little bit of stretching, find out, because certain asanas enables the body to experience the life force in a much more intensive way. Like sitting down on the lotus position, like, this picture here, puts pressure on the base of the spine, right? And when the base of the spine, the pressure is there, you can feel when you start focusing, as what Mahan has shown, you can start feeling that vibration the body's, nerves and all are stretched, you can actually feel that flow of energy much more better. So I always encourage people when they are practicing meditation, sit in the lotus position. It helps to harness that energy. It also helps you to do a little bit of stretching exercise, so that the electrical wires in your body is stretched. It's much more stronger, and the flow becomes more stronger. So I often see that people who have difficulty sitting or difficulty find the energy is much more difficult for them to experience, or it dissipates at a much more faster level. So, number one, to experience the subtle bodily regions or parts of the sheets of the body, the health of the physical body is very important. The second aspect is when that is healthy, when the brain is healthy, when the brain is able to focus and concentrate, you start seeing that, the next phase, which is actually a pranamaya kosha, which is actually your life force. You experience your life force with a strong, powerful brain and mind. Brain is the hardware, mind is the software. If the hardware is not strong and healthy, it is hard for the software called the mind to focus. So, as I always emphasize, that keeping the body and the brain healthy, eating well, eating the right food for the brain food, right? Exercising the brain, playing games, reading, reflecting, all that is crucial as part of the meditational process. Not just sitting down quietly and meditating, it's that pushing the brain, pushing the mind to the next phase of evolution. When we do that, we see that we stop focusing on small, trivial things that upset ordinary people, right? So we see that, you are slowly able to experience that energy field in yourself, the kundalini, the energy sheath, the pranayama kosha, the life force, the source of that physical bodily experience and existence, right? So when the wires, the electrical circuit is strong and firing away, you can experience it. When the body is weak, when the brain is weak, the firing of the electrical, pulse and, the Kundalini force is hard for someone to experience because the hardware is weak. The software is unable to, tap into, because the software and the hardware are interrelated. There's a symbiotic relationship between the two. So when one cannot get that, energy experience, when the life force, experience of the life force cannot be felt, then I hear sometimes disciples saying, Guru, I can't feel the unarvu. There are others that say, well, I felt the unarvu very well, but over time they become more and more, take things for granted, and then they find it hard, right? So, but when you intensify, right, you can feel the life force, and suddenly you see that your ability to manage your thoughts, your ability to manage your emotions, the ability to move the life force in every facet of your life. That's why I say move the pranas. You have full control over this. Your mental sheet, your state of mental, substratum, or the mental sheet becomes really strong. Your manomaya kosha you become full control. No emotions impact you. You know how to put your mind to sleep. You know how to put the mind to be quiet. You know how to put the mind to be powerful when you need to use it. So this is, and to do that, you see that then what happens is that you experience your life force, you get a surge of energy, a surge of vibrancy, a surge of dynamism. But at the same time, you have full control of who you are. And you start nurturing the values that help you reinforce this. Many people find it, Guru, yeah, I'm practicing all this, but I'm finding it hard to be graceful, right? Shooting off emails, shooting off WhatsApp without thinking very carefully, right? that gracefulness requires a lot of tolerance, a lot of patience, a lot of, thinking through things before we react. So when when our manomaya kosha, we have full control of our mental state, we have full control of our thoughts and our emotions, we're able to then channel that to the core values of a Mahan, the gracefulness, the gratitude, the patience, perseverance, persistence, all those things that I spoke about. It doesn't, you don't have to think about it. It naturally happens, right? Before I do something, I think through, okay, is this the right way to do? Am I being gentle? So all those things so what happens is that the energy field enables the mind, the mental state, to be always checking, always refining, always. And there's this refinement that takes place. And this is the part Swamiji talks about, the subtle region. Without the refinement, we would not be able to touch that more subtle part of us. Right? So suddenly you see that the core values of the GP Mahan starts showing up in you. And you see that, hey, the mind becomes more subtle, more settled, the sense of quietude that takes place. When that happens, you go into a much more subtler state. So the mind now is strong. Remember, we started with the body being strong. The body being strong helps us to experience our life force in a much more intensive way. The experience of that life force gives us a much more solid control of our mental state. Our mental state becomes strong. Nothing shakes it. We become the determinant of the direction, the emotional state, and we can even bring it down to a state of quietude. When that happens, we are not wasting our energy on frivolous things. Automatically, we see that the ability to analyze, the ability to rationalize, the ability to think through deeper, the power of discrimination becomes more powerful, right? The power to know, the power to experience, the subtle aspects of us becomes more and more profound. So our intellectual sheet becomes more sharper, deeper, broader, right? This is so a strong physical body enables us to experience the frequency the body is in, the subtle frequency. It helps us to experience that astral state of our existence. And when that becomes strong and powerful, we start experiencing the Anandamaya Kosha, the blissful state. Swamiji says, Summa Irukum Sugam, the deep tapas state. Deep tapas is not just deep meditation. The deep tapas state is actually the deep state of existence in the waking and the non-waking state. And we're able to separate, as I go to a deeper frequency, this is the bodily state, this is the mental state, this is my, intellectual state, and there is another state which separates all that is still at that material level. As we go deeper, we start separating to that much more subtler level. And as we push this, ultimately, we reach a much more subtler experience, which is that universal identity, the experience that essentially gives rise to everything, including the body, mind, that which powers everything. So it is a stage development. And ultimately, when you come to the final state, you realize all the states are awakening, being sustained and dissolved by this universal state of existence. The Swami says, Yenul Nan Arinden. He said, I experience everything within me. So every facet of our lives, in the physical body, this universal state in the physical form was my body. In that in the form of the, pranamaya kosha. It is in the form of my life force, in the form of the software that nature has blessed us with to operate in this material world, the thoughts and the emotions. It's another subtle level. And a much more subtler level of than thoughts is that the level of intellectual or jnana, right? That's also me in a much more refined state. And ultimately, you see that it becomes the Anandamaya Kosha, which is actually the blissful state. So we see that universal state. This is what the I God philosophy is. Nan Kadavul is actually about this. All these different bodies arise, sustain, and dissolve in it. And if we experience that, you see that every moment becomes a beautiful moment. Every moment you would never miss the divinity. And this is what Swamiji captures, that how do we visit the subtle regions? So, number one, you have to keep your body healthy. That means that you have to cultivate good values, such as exercise. You don't have to do strenuous exercise. You don't have to go to the gym and carry weights and, bulk up your muscles and all those things. No, just go for a simple walk. Make sure that, occasionally you do 2 or 3 asanas that works for you. I do about 3 to 4 asanas, that keeps my body, healthy, keeps my, I'm able to stretch. I'm able to sit in a lotus position. I don't get backaches as you age. These are things that come. So you do certain stretching so that your joints are all well toned, your muscles are well toned, do breathing exercise, try to eat healthy. All these are critical to, and also, nurturing good thoughts, right? Reading, reflecting, introspect, all these are important part of the healthy brain. Healthy brain leads to a healthy mind. A healthy mind leads to a healthy intellect. A healthy intellect enables us to go deeper, to understand much more subtler things than a gross mind, and ultimately leading us to that God realization state. Sandosham.